Good morning, I'm Tracy Noah from the City of Marion Library Service and welcome to our Library Through the Lens live webinar. I acknowledge today that I am on Kaurna land and recognise the Kaurna people as the traditional and continuing custodians of the land. Since the closure of our libraries and venues, we've been working hard to still connect and engage with you through our Library Through the Lens series of adult programs delivered differently. We had to reimagine how to bring you the programs that you've grown to expect from us, so thank you for joining us today. This morning, we once again welcome Alice Bacon of Focus on You, whose key focus is in emotional health and wellness, and she will help you to learn how to achieve optimal health by integrating emotional health into your daily life. Please feel free at any time during the presentation to type questions you have for Alice into the Q&A box, and she will answer these later. Now sit back, relax, and please welcome Alice.
Thanks, Tracy. Good morning, everybody, and thank you all for being here with us this morning and part of this workshop. I would first like to thank Marion Library and Tracy for this opportunity to be able to deliver to each and every one of you this morning. There have been so many changes over the last several months, and to be able to have this platform to be able to share and express is just so appreciative, and I'm very much grateful for it. So just a couple of things before we start. I just wanted to mention that there is the gallery picture view that generally for most people it sits on the top right hand side. You can move that down to the lower right hand side or left. As I will be delivering the PowerPoint, it's just being mindful of any of the text if it does end up being covered. So there is the option to be able to move that around. Also, if you have a pen and paper handy, and as Tracy mentioned, there's the Q&A, but there's also the opportunity to add some feedback into chat, which I'll be asking you to do throughout the workshop. It's just if you feel comfortable. And we're just about to begin. So I'm just about to share my screen and introduce my PowerPoint for the morning. So today's topic is on neutralizing stress and parenting yourself. And at any time during the presentation, if you have any questions or if you feel like I'm going too fast or need a bit more information, please use the chat line or the Q&A section, and Tracy will be able to loop me in. So thank you. So neutralizing stress and parenting yourself. What does that mean, and why do I have such a big smile? Neutralizing stress, it's an amazing tool and technique, and today's PowerPoint is going to provide you with some insights and some strategies that you can start applying into everyday life. This is about how do we arm you to, really bring forward that best version of who you are that exists within you every single moment of the day. But sometimes when we get stress, it can really cover up who we are in true essence. And when I say parenting yourself, so we parent ourselves reactively every day, perhaps without even realizing. So I'm going to explain as we go through what does it actually mean to parent yourself and how you can use that to be most effective. And this really is about unlocking the power of self-transformation that I truly believe, and from what I've seen and witnessed with hundreds of people that I've worked with one-on-one, but also facilitating, every single individual has the power of themselves to transform, to be and achieve anything that their heart desires. And hopefully you feel from today's workshop, even if you just take one thing away from today's workshop, that you can start putting into practice and really seeing how it unfolds to you in the most magical and mysterious ways. So I'm going to begin. So the keys to optimal health: neutralize stress, parent yourself to awareness, and integrate emotional health into daily life. Each and every one of us can learn tools and strategies on how to neutralize our stress. The moment we learn to neutralize our stress, a whole world of opportunity presents on clarity, solutions, possibilities that can really arm us to, as I said earlier, to be the best version of who we are, to really experience who we are in true essence and who we authentically are. And we can parent ourselves to wellness. We have the tools within us. We have them available readily, just waiting for our permission and our command. And integrate emotional health into your daily life. The moment we start focusing on what causes us to stress and how to relieve and resolve that stress, our emotions, our healthy emotions improve our overall wellness, health, the way that we view ourselves, the way we interact and internalize, and the way that we interact with other people. So there are so many factors for stress and health that impact us in many ways. And as we go through, if you're comfortable to add, what resonates for you, what is causing your stresses to attacking you. And there are so many different, just our mere existence, our everyday life when, we go to sleep the night before thinking we've got to get up for work in the morning, that can potentially organize us to stress. Our physical health, how we're feeling, but also when we're asked to do something physical that we're not familiar with or we haven't done before, just the thought of being asked to partake in a new activity, a new sport, trying out netball or soccer for the first time. It's amazing just thinking about doing something physical that we haven't done before, that it can cause our body to stress because we're not familiar and we're not sure how it's going to feel.
Excuse me, Alice, sorry. Are we seeing your PowerPoint at the moment?
Oh, I'm seeing my PowerPoint. Let me just see. Let me go back to Zoom. And so I'm seeing my PowerPoint. Let me just bring back up Zoom. So how's that?
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, so what I might do is I might just go back, and this was the first screen, everybody, so I do apologize. Neutralizing stress, parenting yourself, unlocking the power of self-transformation. The three topics on neutralizing self, parenting yourself to wellness, and integrate emotional health into daily life. And also, this is the screen that I was talking about, that if anything resonates, if you can add it. And Tracy, I'll just do a check-in. Everybody can see the screen now?
Yes, they can. Thank you.
Perfect. So I apologize, everybody. So financial is the next one. And I just want to give an example. Everybody has different financial stresses. Just something that I found is a really interesting technique is if you ever get a bill that is unexpected, whether it's an electricity bill, a different type of utility bill, or even a speeding fine that's unexpected, it's really interesting how much we can deliberate and concern ourselves with that bill. And at 100%, not everybody has the finances or can prioritize payment. But it's really interesting that as soon as that bill is paid, it has a way of dissolving from our memory. And so the next time that you get a bill that might be unexpected, or a utility bill that you're wondering, how are you going to cope with the payments, consider two options. If it's a utility bill, as soon as you get it, contact the utility agency and ask them if that bill can be paid in installments. And if you have the finances to pay the bill, pay it straight away and just see how once it's out of sight, it's out of mind. But our everyday finances and our upcoming commitments can really put a lot of stress and impact our health. Our digestive system, how we process food and the nutritions that we put in. There's so many more preservative. A lot of people are making the decisions to no longer eat packet food or canned food. And, even just by going back to, natural vegetables and natural products that haven't been created in packets, just how much that's making a difference for people and how they process and how they feel. And they have shown that our gut our stomach has a brain itself. So really, you know, and I know for myself, with what I put in, if I go to a party and if I'm really disciplined, if I make a decision that morning to parent myself and say, Alice, today you're not going to have any snacks that you see at that party. And I parent myself saying, you know, when you get home, you can have a nice dinner and really enjoy it. But, you know, by not snacking at that party, not even starting to snack, I don't feel that I'm drawn to keep going back for those cupcakes or the cheese and the biscuits or the sweet things that are on offer. And yet if I go to a party, the first time I put something in my mouth that's sweet, I find that I'm drawn back to that food the whole time I'm there. And by the end of it, I feel not only really full, but, you know, uncomfortable and also feeling fatigue in the afternoon. And, you know, by not being able to stop because of the preservatives and all the sweetness that just makes us crave for more, I'm actually putting my body under a lot of stress without even realizing. And, you know, then we have the stress that comes with our day-to-day jobs, not only while we're there, but, you know, on the weekend thinking, well, I've got to go to work. And if you're someone that doesn't have a lot of clothes, you might be thinking and being stressing about, well, what are you going to wear? You know, so there's so many factors, and, you know, there's also our relationships with our loved ones, with our friends. You know, social media is very big. So when we see things on social media and we see what other people are doing, you know, that can impact us with, you know, their lives look like the grass is greener on the other side all the time. And then we might start comparing ourselves, or might feel that, you know, we're not doing as many things. So, you know, so our relationships are impacted not only in the home or the work environment, but social media and our networks just expand so much further than what they used to. And then there's what's happening with our body chemically that we're going to be touching on today that also causes a lot of stress. So if you're comfortable to put in the chat which one of those or which several of those might be impacting you on a daily basis that you're aware of. So research has shown us that stress causes up to 87% of health issues, which is extremely alarming. That if we can identify what is causing us to stress. So throughout this presentation, the more aware that you become of what is causing you to trigger, you can really be empowered to take control of what's happening with you health-wise. And if we have a look at all the studies, when somebody is going into treatment or a trial, they're always offering half of the patients a placebo drug and half of the patients the trial drug. And they have shown that people who have taken the placebo, just because of their belief and their confidence of taking something, and, you know, that belief that perhaps they're actually on the trial drug, it's actually caused them, you know, to actually recover and heal from their diseases and their illnesses. So it's amazing that when we can change and shift our mindset, how much that can actually impact our health issues. And then there is cortisol is released when we perceive a threat. So even by comparing yourself to another person, comparing how you used to feel about yourself 10 years ago to how you feel about yourself now, every single time we compare, we perceive a threat and we go into that fight or flight, or we go into fight or flight when we're feeling like we're being boxed in, or somebody is confronting us, or somebody is agitated with us, but we don't know why. So whenever we're not aligned to our values, it releases cortisol. And that cortisol is which risks our health and puts us into that fight or flight. And we all know how we feel when we're being caught off guard and we just don't know what to say or what to do. And that chemical is just rushing through our body. And something really valuable that I learnt recently is when we feel threatened, or when something causes us to become angry, agitated, or frustrated, we actually release a chemical of an adrenaline within our system. And that adrenaline can stay in our system for hours. So if we can learn to neutralize how our emotions feel as soon as we become reactive, we stop that chemical adrenaline rushing through our body. And the benefit of that is if we don't, over the next several hours, anytime anyone comes into our space or agitates us, it's like they're pressing our buttons, and we can get really short and sharp with them and not even know why, but we just feel this fight, flight, or freeze, and we don't realize that, you know, the thing that might have occurred us to become agitated in traffic at 7 o'clock in the morning, or the argument that you might have had with your partner or with your child or with a loved one, has caused an adrenaline that literally stays in our system for several hours after and can cause us to trigger. And much of our stress comes from within, misaligned to our core values, and everybody's different. You know, some people suffer depression and anxiety. Some people with stress, it causes them to have their high blood pressure, causes heart disease. We don't recognize that if somebody has a skin disorder or a skin rash, that could actually be triggered by stress. Our physical DNA interacts differently for every single human being, and stress attacks different parts of our body. So yes, we typically recognize somebody with depression or anxiety as being quite stressful. But how often do we recognize that, you know, if you have a skin allergy, or you have arthritis, or you have some issues with, you know, your elbow or your knee joints, and how that is potentially stress attacking you and your body? So just something to be mindful and to consider. I was very fortunate to be introduced to a woman by the name of Caroline Leaf, Dr. Caroline Leaf, who is a doctor who has specialised on the brain and the mind for over 30 years. And Caroline Leaf really demonstrates how health issues start in the mind. And toxic thoughts. So toxic thoughts are thoughts that do not serve us, whether they are thoughts that we're worrying about how we're going to pay that bill. If they're thoughts about worrying, we've got a performance review coming up at work and we're really struggling on how to articulate. So we start panicking, we start hesitating. You know, there are a number of things that are toxic thoughts that might not seem evident to people initially. Toxic thoughts are even, berating ourselves that we've got nothing to wear and going into that panic because we're worried about people seeing the same thing, or we don't feel our clothes are fitting us anymore. So really innocent things become toxic thoughts that create black masses that hinder our wisdom and intuition. So if you have a look at the diagram, you can see where there is the green neurons and they're healthy thoughts, and you can see the black neurons are toxic thoughts. So I just want you to imagine that it's really dark and cloudy and raining outside, the storm's coming in. The only place we feel like being is in shelter at home, where we're safe and we're secure. And unfortunately, our toxic thoughts create this black mass, and this black mass ends up covering our healthy neurons. We need our healthy neurons for our intelligence, for our wisdom. Healthy neurons are like really healthy trees that have lots of branches and lots of leaves, and they take in lots of oxygen. Our neurons are exactly the same. Our toxic thoughts create massive black masses. Dr. Caroline Leaf and her research shows that somebody who has, even severe anxiety or depression while still seeking medical help, but if they can change their thoughts, they can actually reverse those toxic thoughts. They can reverse, the toxic neurons that have started to shrink and started to kill those neurons, and create new healthy neurons that grow and really allow our wisdom and our intuition to just flow. And the amazing thing, when we've got healthy thoughts that serve us, it triggers what's called multiple perspective advantage, which helps our ability to observe and change our thoughts, actions, and behaviors. So if you combine that with neutralizing your stress reactors, which we're going to go through today, it actually puts you at a very strong advantage to be able to really observe with clarity and wisdom, to draw your line in the sand and make a decision to really value you, empower you, and put you in the driver's seat to be really accountable for where your life is leading you. So we have comparison to others. Comparing ourselves negatively to others causes our cortisol, our stress hormone, to release that threat response, fight or flight. It causes us to have reduced resilience and confidence, and then we start scanning for the negative. Over time, it may escalate into imposter syndrome. And, you know, I really do wonder if this starts when kids are at school. And I know for myself, putting up my hand and so excited when a teacher has asked a question and she's waiting for the children to respond, and we all get so excited and we all want to make an impression. We all put up our hand. But if that teacher isn't feeling her optimal self, or something's happened in the morning, and if she in any way responds in a negative way to that child, if that child is so excited to give their response, but then they give their response and then they're made to feel either, you know, it wasn't a good enough response, or it was a silly response, or perhaps even that they were stupid. And I know this doesn't happen very often in today's day, but I know that it was quite frequent, you know, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And even being as a child hesitant to start putting up the hand, we might start questioning ourselves. And I really wonder how this links up with imposter syndrome. And, you know, we all suffer imposter syndrome without realizing. You know, how often have you wanted to apply for a job, a new job, or a new position at work, and you've thought, well, perhaps I'm not good enough. Perhaps, you know, John, who sits next to me, or Sandra, or, you know, Alexandra, perhaps they're going to be more qualified, so I better not apply. And it's amazing that they have found there is an extremely high percentage of CEOs running multi-million-dollar companies, and they suffer imposter syndrome. They're in their office waiting to be caught out because they cannot believe that they hold these positions that have so much accountability. And I know for myself, we compare ourselves all the time without realizing. When I was going to the gym 4 times a week, you know, things have changed at the moment. We're all exercising at home, but I remember for years going into the gym, and you know, I would start comparing myself, especially to people who had lost weight and maintained that weight for a number of years. Because every time I lost weight, I would lose the weight, maybe, you know, not put it back on for a year or two, but after that I would start to put it on. And I didn't realize that when I was looking at people in the gym that had lost weight, I didn't realize by comparing, I was releasing my cortisol, which was my stress hormone. Because my body thinks it's under threat, under attack, it wants to reserve its energy. So it was pulling back my energy in case I had a lion that was just about to hunt me down and kill me. And then at the end of our gym session, we'd all have to high five and clap for how well we did. And I really felt like an imposter, because at the end of those sessions, I didn't feel like I had actually trained that hard. And so, of course, I experienced that imposter syndrome. And, you know, it was really about identifying that I was comparing myself, and really having to change that thought pattern, because I didn't realize at the time how much it was even impacting my ability and my strength to actually work out within that gym session. So just something to be mindful. You know, how often are you comparing yourself to other people, and how is that actually impacting your overall health? So we have a activity, social engagements. There are so many different social platforms when we go out to parties and events. How often are we comparing what we're wearing to somebody else? You know, are we comparing that, you know, that we're just not going to be able to have those conversations, and that's potentially causing us to stress. So I want you to think about a time you found yourself feeling a little envy. So for myself, when I used to look at somebody and think, oh, they've lost weight and they've kept it off all these years, and why haven't I would just repeat in my head, Alice, it's just a story you're telling yourself. Stop it. So if you can just take a moment just to think of a time you found yourself feeling a little envy, and just close your eyes and say to yourself, and just reenact, visually see yourself saying, this is just a story I'm telling myself. It's amazing the moment we say that, it has a way of severing ties with our concentration and really draws that line in the sand to bring us back to the present moment, where we can actually start seeing what is real for us rather than going down the rabbit hole with those stories. And then gratitude is the killer of envy. You cannot be grateful and be envy at the same time. You can't even be grateful and angry at the same time. So if you've got a pen and paper handy, or in the chat, or even just think to yourself, think of 3 things that you're grateful and why. This is a practice that my husband and I do almost every single night. As hesitant as he is, he goes along with it, and I feel there is an element that he enjoys. Now, they've shown that our overall health can be improved greatly by naming 3 things that we're grateful, but actually putting why we're grateful for it really brings it to life, because while we're saying the why, we're visualizing how it's making us feel. And scientists have proven that when we use visualization as part of our thought process, we're creating new memory muscle in our neurons in our brain that actually arm us and strengthens what we can do. So I'm just going to give you a moment just to think, even just one thing. So I know for myself, when I go to sleep, just even saying, I'm so grateful for my bed because it's so comfortable and I get a really good night's sleep without waking up throughout the night. And in the morning, I feel so much rested and assured. And just even that, you know, it trains my brain for how I'm feeling. You know, give it a go, either with yourself or with your children or with your partner at the end of the night, and just see how it feels. There will be some resistance in the beginning to do the gratefuls and the why, because we always have resistance. You know, until we become familiar with something, we're not going to become confident. We need to become familiar to allow us to be comfortable and then confident. And I hope you all enjoy it as much as myself and my husband do, and we get to do it throughout the evening. So Tracy, I might just check in to see how I'm going with pace and if everybody is okay the way I'm going.
Excellent. I did have a comment from Jody if we could go a little bit slower. That was quite a few slides ago, so I'm actually just typing, making sure she's okay.
Yep.
Just letting people know too that in about a week or so, you can watch the recording of today's webinar back on our YouTube channel, so you can revisit it and watch it at your own pace. And I'm sure Alice will let me share her PowerPoint with you by email after today's presentation.
Yeah, definitely, Tracy, the PowerPoint will be available in PDF. And also, if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to follow up with any single one of the slides at all, with any questions that you have, and even to follow up with a conversation if that will help. So thank you, Jody, for that feedback. Appreciate it, and I'll be mindful of it. So self-protection is a natural biological mechanism. What does that mean? It's really interesting that one of my favorite topics is really understanding what the ego is. And some people have heard about what the ego is and some people haven't. And some people think that ego is somebody who has a big head, loves themselves, and arrogant. But we don't realize that that ego within us is just trying to protect us. And that ego could be our insecurities, our fears. You know, we've just said something and we are worried that it was embarrassing. And so we're constantly thinking about it. So we don't realize how many disguises the ego comes into. And we're going to touch a bit on that in the presentation in a little while. But really, every single one has a self-protection within us. And that fight or flight and that freeze was really initiated from caveman days to keep us safe from other tribes that potentially were going to harm us, or, you know, live animals, the lion chasing us, hunting us down. So when we go into that self-protection, the ego itself wants to isolate you as much as possible for your own self-protection. It doesn't realize that if you're in traffic getting agitated by another driver, or if one of your children or one of your loved ones have said something without thinking and that's upset you, it doesn't realize that that is any different from your life physically being in danger of potentially harm coming to you. So when our body perceives that we're in danger, it scans 10 negative thoughts to 1 positive. It needs you to be alert. It needs you to be mindful. It needs you to scan your entire environment, and the mind will find the most direct way to protect us. So as an example, if you're having an argument with a loved one or one of your children, if you haven't broken the concentration, walked away from that situation within 90 seconds, the ego itself is going to do whatever it can to try and create separation, to isolate you. And that's why when we meet somebody new, when we start dating someone, we start initially and they upset us, we let it go. We don't get upset, you know, but over the next months or the next 2 or 3 years, when we argue, we become, you know, we become more personal about it. We attack, can become more vicious. And that's because over time, the ego has learned strategies to try and self-protect. And that's why when people go to war, we've seen over the years that, you know, it started off with, you know, swords, and then it went to guns, and then it went to cannons, and then it went to nuclear weapons. And, you know, it's exactly the same, that they've learned to strategize how to be more effective. And the ego is exactly the same. And if we can be mindful of this, we can really, really learn to make a decision to isolate ourselves by neutralizing our emotions and really taking control of protecting ourselves without that autopilot stepping in from the ego. So, and every single person has an internal alarm systems. This is about how do you start relating to your negative emotions, what you see as your angst and your frustrations and your stresses, as your alarm for just warning you, wanting to get your attention, wanting to get you to pause, to use mindfulness to pause and stop in that moment and really assess what is happening. So you can turn off your alarm. By turning off your alarm, you see the underlying stress. It's exactly like turning off a clock alarm. That alarm could be really loud, and we can't really hear what else is other noise that's around us unless we make that decision to turn off the alarm. And our emotions are exactly the same. When you parent yourself, you shift from the stress and you start to uncover the truth. But unfortunately, when we have this stress in our body and it's releasing a chemical within us, and we've got adrenaline, it triggers chaos. And when we've got chaos, when we've got lots of noise in our head, we can't possibly have clarity and see the solutions at the same time. So we need to let go of the stress emotions to really create an empty platform to really arm us for the way the best forward. And here we've got some examples of different stress identifiers and what is your true identifiers. So I've got a couple of slides here that I'm going to go through with you, and I just want you to take a moment to have a look, perhaps start with the stress identifier and see if you recognize any of those. The more you recognize of these stress identifiers, the more it is to your advantage. Okay. The reason being is, you know, when we drive, we're taught about the lights. Green is to go, red is to stop, but we're not actually taught how do we identify our stress identifiers. So we recognize them as our alarm and our signal to actually stop and pause in that moment. Now, if you recognize any of the stress identifiers on this page, and I've got another slide in a moment, I want you to know that that is indicating 100% of who you are not. If you feel that you're starting to argue, if you feel that you're starting to be bossy or over friendly, where if you're feeling over friendly, when you're not stressed, you're caring. Or when you're feeling aggressive, when you're stressed, when you're not stressed, you may feel calm and patient. But if you're stressed, you might find it hard to act. Those stress identifiers is trying to give you an alarm that is the opposite of when you're in your flow and feeling calm. And if we can identify any one of those stress identifiers and think, okay, this is just an alarm letting me know to stop. The moment that you pause, how you are when you're not stressed will start to present. And I've got some more examples here. So as an example, you know, you could be, as a true identifier, you could be really frank in a very healthy way. You can be very directing. You can be somebody that solves practical problems when you're in your flow. But when you become stressed, you may be over insistent on the rules. You may be over analyze. You know, when you're calm, you may find it easy to make decisions, but the moment you become stressed, all of a sudden you struggle to make decisions, or you may become too cautious. So if we can start to look at this list, and while you're feeling the stress in that moment, you're not going to initially be able to pause and draw that line in the sand, but you can start thinking about strategies and becoming mindful that make a decision that if you start to become impatient, if you start to become too cautious, start thinking about, well, what is it that I can do to actually pull myself out of it? And we're going to have some examples that you're going to be able to go through as we go through the next few slides. So I hope these help everybody to just look. Stress identifies 100% who we're not. Our true identifiers is who we are when everything's working for us, when we're in our flow and feeling comfortable within ourselves. And research has shown that the primary drivers of human activity is love and fear. They've also shown through research that the human only has two primary emotions, being love and fear. So when we're calm and in our flow, we're coming from that love emotion, where when we're feeling chaos and stress and angry, not able to make decisions, there's something driving us from fear that's stopping us from going forward. We've released that cortisol, that stress, and all of a sudden we go into the panic. The moment we go into panic, our brain puts its foot on the brake because it knows we've hesitated, and we go into that procrastination mode because the brain recognizes, okay, there's some sort of panic, it's stress, it needs to conserve its energy to arm for a real life-threatening, dangerous situation. It doesn't realize that we've just said something and we're worried that it came across the wrong way, or we may have offended somebody. So it's just about being mindful. The subconscious mind, they say, makes 95 to 99% of decisions. And a good way of looking at this is, how often have you driven from A to B and wondered how you got there? I know for myself that sometimes I'd be driving and I'd get to my destination and I'd be thinking, how did I even get here? Because I was so locked in my subconscious mind. And I was so fortunate that my autopilot kicked in and was able to get me there safely. But of course, that would sometimes shock me that what didn't I notice on the way? Yes, I got there safely. But when I make a decision to be really present when I'm driving, all of a sudden I observe all the trees that I go past. I observe all the buildings. I observe if there's, been new buildings that have gone up in an area that I haven't been. But if I drive from A to B, yes, I get there safely, but I haven't been conscious of what I've seen on the way. And fear was designed, as I've already expressed, to keep us safe. It's not there for modern first world problems. And it's amazing how, a lot of people have made a decision to, they once had Facebook accounts. They no longer use Facebook. They no longer use social media, Instagram, because they found that they were just in this constant comparing of how it made them feel. And the degree of love or fear determines what's required to balance our emotions. So when we're operating from love and not fear, it's amazing how we have this harmony and this presence that really centers us. And if we do want fear to go away, we need to get to the root of it. We need to see what it is that's driving that fear. The brain needs to be in harmony between the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. So it is said that fear comes from the left side of the brain. It's rooted in something that's happened in our past that's, unresolved, a pattern of behavior, something that we've experienced from the past that keeps coming up every single time we're not balanced or we're feeling any frustration or anxiety. And we all know when we're not feeling ourselves or when we're feeling unbalanced, that we just become very agitated. Where they say that love comes from the right side of the brain, when we're being present in the present moment, we're not thinking of the future, we're not worried about the past, and we have an ability to be really at peace and at harmony and really be able to be innovative and creative and identify solutions that are really going to help us. And fear is the false self. It comes from the ego. The ego is misunderstood. It is there to protect us. But unfortunately, we've never been educated for how it's trying to communicate. The ego actually wants to keep you safe. The ego knows that its role is to protect you. And it's trying to get our attention because up to 87% of our health issues are caused by stress. So the ego just tries to make noise as you're an alarm. And if we can recognize that, if we can choose love, which is our true self, the authentic self, some people refer to it as the soul or the higher self, we can really learn to operate from a place of love and not fear. And when we're going to just stop for Q&A in a moment, and when we get back, we're going to have an activity just to find our true selves from fear, love, ego, soul, false self to true self. And there's a picture on the right hand side I just want you to have a look at in a minute. And you can see on the left side is the ego, the false self. That is our primary emotion of fear, how we feel. If we're feeling separation, blame, hostility, resentment, there's some sort of fear within us. Where our other primary emotion is love, where we feel humble, we feel grateful, we feel happiness and understanding. It's where we can feel compassion. So when we look at the left-hand side, we can really start to identify if you're ever not in your flow or feeling any stress or anxiety, which of these attributes might you be feeling? And then on the right-hand side, what are the opposites of those? And you might want to share this in the chat or the Q&A, or even just jot down something that really relates and is relevant to you. So Tracy, I'm going to pause now just for some Q&A and just to see how everybody is going.
Great. Yep. So we do have a question here from Jody. So she asks, do the truth identifiers and stress identifiers work in particular partnerships as they are laid out next to each other in the table?
Yep. So what I'm going to do, can I just ask to stop? I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. There we go. So can I just get you to repeat that, please, Tracy?
Sure. Do the truth identifiers and stress identifiers work in particular partnerships as they are laid out next to each other in the table?
Oh, Jody, amazing question. Thank you so much. Jody, I've been really fortunate to do lots of one-on-ones, as I've mentioned, and I'm so fortunate to use assessment tools as well with a lot of the one-on-ones that I get to do. And there is a particular assessment tool that really shows what our stress identifiers are. So what are we in our authentic presence? And what is the opposite that is trying to get our attention, ours as an eternal alarm? So with all the case studies and all the one-on-ones, yes, 100% those list. That's why they're so extensive, is because I've really tried to partner up the opposite. So if you're somebody who is normally very calm, when you're experiencing your joy, if you're someone who is really good at making decisions and being energized by those decisions when everything is working for you, it's amazing that when we look at what is what's our external factors, so what is not giving us what we need. So you know, we can't ever control what somebody else is doing, what the environment's doing, but if we can see that our external factors aren't enabling us to be our best version of ourselves, then those internal triggers is just trying to get our attention to say, pause, stop. You know, it is shown that it takes up to 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds to literally pull yourself out of that emotional reactor. If you can break that concentration with that emotional angst, all of a sudden, clarity is what presents. So Jody, I hope that answers your question. And by having the PDF, the slides available to you, it's really good to be able to, you know, reflect back and do a bit of a cross check as well. So I hope that helps and answers the question.
That's great. They were awesome, those stress identifiers. Just in regards again to your slides, because people have been asking me privately while you're speaking, if you can please just email me. You should all have my email address. After the presentation, I can share those with you in the next few days. Alice is okay with that. Yeah. There's no more questions as yet. Everybody's shy, but somebody had put some reflections about what they were grateful for earlier, if you'd like me to share those with you.
Oh, that would be lovely. Thank you.
So it's Jody. So she says she's grateful for her health because it allows her to have good relationships with her family. And she's grateful for technology because it allows her to maintain her social connections, and also for where she's living because it allows her to be supported in her life.
Yeah. So Jody, thank you so much. And, you know, thank you. I'm grateful for you being on today's webinar, and I know you were on last week's. And, you know, something we spoke about last week was visualization, and how research has shown that when we visualize, we get up to 100% accuracy, where when we physically do something, we only get up to 55% accuracy. And that's why actors and musicians and sports stars will practice what they have to do rather than like practice through their visualization rather than physically do. So Jody, when you say those gratefuls, you're literally creating pictures in your mind, and that reinforces that neural pathway. And we have got a 2-minute video that I'm going to show and go through that literally shows how we can rewire our brain instantly and create new neural pathways. So the benefit of having the gratefuls and why we're grateful is you're literally creating memory muscle. Your brain thinks you're physically actually doing it. which just reinforces that behavior. So definitely a lot of value. So thank you so much for bringing that question up. Really appreciate it, and sharing your grateful. Thank you.
Excellent. Nev asks, the multiple perspective advantage sounds like it will come from observing ourselves. Can you speak a little bit about the inner observer?
Yeah, and this is, thank you, Nev. This is really important. All of what we're sharing today is strategies and tools. And admittedly, when you first go to do this in practice, it is more valuable to consider a strategy and arm yourself. So I know for myself, Nev, on the, it was the 20th of September 2014, I made a decision that no matter what happened, if I emotionally reacted or got upset, I was just going to bite my tongue. I was going to bite my tongue, keep my mouth shut, focus and concentrate on the emotion only. And I had made that decision. I'd parented myself well in advance before I was put in a situation for something to trigger. And when it came to my daughter and I, we used to have a relationship, a love-hate relationship. I was like a Jekyll and Hyde. If she was ever rude or disrespectful, I would just immediately react. And I'd made a decision that no matter how she reacted or how she spoke to me, I was just going to bite my tongue and 100% focus on the emotion only. And what I didn't realize at the time that it happened was I was so focused on biting my tongue that all of a sudden this inner observation, this inner awareness opened up. It was this field where I started to see the entire environment around me, including my daughter, and my husband was present as well, and everything was in slow motion. And I started to see things from multiple perspectives. I started to see that my daughter just started another conversation. She hadn't even noticed that I hadn't reacted after she had, said something that I felt offended me. And my husband didn't even notice. And I started to observe the conversations almost as an outsider looking in. And it really motivated me because even though I could feel my emotions, I almost stepped out of the emotions. And what then happened was those emotions had a chance to experience throughout my body. And like a volcano that's about to erupt, it's about letting those emotions go out. And as soon as those emotions released, had their organic experience released out of my body, is the moment that I felt grounded. And all of a sudden, for the first time in 25 years, I felt a sense of control. I felt a sense of clarity. I felt that I was empowered to really make decisions at that point. Now, what was so unusual about that was every single time I became reactive to my daughter, I would just become explosive and we wouldn't talk for days. And because I finally allowed those emotions that I had been carrying for 25 years to release out of my body, within a matter of days, I realized that the reason that I got so offended that with my daughter every time she spoke rudely was of an unresolved issue that I'd been holding on to for most of my life with my relationship with my own parents. And it had nothing to do with my daughter, and yet I was becoming reactive to her. So the moment I decided to respect my emotions and allow them to have their expression and evolve and exit my body, the moment that I saw that my reaction to my daughter really had nothing to do with her, and after 25 years, I apologized to her. Now, what's been most amazing is the dynamics of our relationship changed. Every single time my daughter was then in the future disrespectful, it was about what happened on social media. It was something going on in her life. It wasn't actually about me, but for years I took it personally. And it was after that day, on the 20th of September 2014, I no longer became reactive to my daughter. That, I got a new nickname of CB because they thought I'd gone crazy. They didn't know why all of a sudden I went from being a Jekyll and Hyde to not. So Nev, I know I've spent a bit of time on this example, But I really want everybody to see that if we can identify what causes ourselves to stress, and if we can concentrate on that emotion and allow it to exit out of our system, that true inner observer, that true wisdom, which we call our higher self, our authentic self, our soul, it's anything that resonates. It's that wisdom that, you know, when we're at a party and we're having the best time, and, you know, we just feel like we're having the best conversations with people and really connecting. That is our true authentic self, when we're not layered in conditions of insecurities and doubts and how we look and what we're saying, that true presence. And when we activate that inner wisdom, that inner observer, all of a sudden we see how life is, not how we perceive it, not limited by our own internalization, insecurities and doubts. So Nev, I hope that's answered your question as well. Thank you.
That's great. We've just got one last comment from Nicole. So she says you highlighted about chaos. In the past, there was a regular situation and place where I felt chaos, and it got to the point where I avoided going there to avoid feeling this emotion.
So we can avoid going there 100%. But if you're feeling chaos, it's about recognizing, is this a regular pattern? Because unfortunately, unless you identify the root cause, you don't know when you're going to be in another situation that's going to cause chaos. And, you know, an example that I quite often give is, imagine if a plane wants to land and there's cargo everywhere. It needs an empty platform so it can land. So we need to get the chaos out of the way so we can have an empty platform to actually see what's happening to us. And there are some tools, Nicole, that you're going to be able to use. So the Mindfulness Code is a book that was written by Donald Altman, and he mentions about saying, are my intentions misguided? And I don't know why this works, but I've had CEOs that I've worked with, I've had HR, housewives, you name it, business owners, a whole range of people. And when they put into practice, are my intentions misguided? There's something that's amazing that happens. By consciously saying it, you can have a sticky note on your computer, you can even write it somewhere that you can see it on a daily basis, carry a note on your phone, anywhere you can see it. By saying, are my intentions misguided, you've literally stepped out of the chaos, created a clear platform, and then the only way that you know that you've stepped out of chaos is when clarity presents. And if you can just try doing this even for a week, every time you experience chaos, just by saying, are my intentions misguided? The only way you'll know is when clarity presents. And when you choose to value yourself to the present moment, value who you are, bring your brain into coherence, into harmony, what will happen is over the next 12 to 24 to 72 hours, you'll have intuition, a light bulb moment that will literally connect the dots from the past of what's caused you to chaos. But until you choose to value yourself, choose an alternative to change the pattern, to create a new pathway, even by saying, are my intentions misguided? You're literally choosing clarity to see what's actually trying to present through your emotions that are only trying to communicate to you to identify what is unresolved, because your body, your emotions, your ego never want you to experience chaos. They want you to have clarity. They want you to have optimal health. Your body wants to work for you, not against you. So I really hope that helps, and thank you for such a valuable question.
Great. I think that's all the questions we have for now. Alice, if you wanted to continue on.
Okay, and I'm about to share my screen and bring back up the PowerPoint. So I'm just going to go back to this. So as I mentioned, we're just going to do a quick activity. If you haven't already, just have a look at the ego and think of at least 3 features of the ego, and then see if you can recognize the opposite. So, you know, if you're feeling anger when you're stressed, you might be feeling happiness when you're calm. If you have intolerance when you're stressed, then when you're being authentic, you may feel tolerant. And if you may have resentment, by choosing your true self, your authentic self, when you experience resentment and make that line in the sand, all of a sudden you may find yourself feeling forgiveness and compassion. So if anyone would like to add any in the chat, write any down, or even just think of any 3 for yourself. And I'll give you a moment. So Heart Intelligence Heart Math Institute. So research has found, and the Heart Math Institute, you can do a search on Google. It has so much extensive information. They say that the heart is around about 100,000 times stronger electrically and up to 5,000 times stronger magnetically than the brain. Quantum physics and scientists have shown that the heart has over 40,000 neurons, and those 40,000 neurons have a way of communicating from one person's heart to another. So they say our emotions are transmitted through the body's cardio-electromagnetic field. And if we can learn how to self-regulate our emotions, it increases our emotional stability, our mental acuity, and physiological efficiencies. So by harmonizing how we're feeling, by centering ourselves in our heart, it increases our brain and heart coherence and synergy. By having genuine feelings that are driven from that base emotion of love versus fear, all of a sudden we can become more creative, we can become more intelligent. And I know for myself that I'm very comfortable going into a completely new field of work. If I get given a contract, I know it's about me understanding the brief. And I know it's about the work that I do between my mind and my heart that really will bring forward my ability with my intelligence and my wisdom and my ability to be innovative and creative for how I can contribute to that organization. And I use strategies every single day. You know, I use strategies, you know, because I feel that making that decision to use those strategies is sending an instruction to my neural pathway in my brain for what I want to experience for that day. And, you know, if you go visit family and they're happy, you want to be there. If you go visit family and they're not happy, you don't. And we don't realize how somebody else is feeling physically in their heart and how they're internalizing in their mind and how that actually impacts the environment. There is so much study and research that shows how healthier plants are if they're in an environment where there is harmony, where people are in coherence between their heart and the brain. And our left side of the brain, which interacts with the past, our fears, our doubts, they say that we have up to 70 to 90,000 thoughts a day that are centered in the past. That puts most people in an unhappy state up to 40%, 47% of their day. We never go to problem solve the things that make us happy, but we do go to problem solve the things that upset us. So if we can recognize when we're in reflecting of the past, we can't change the past. None of us have a time machine, or we haven't got a camera that we can go back and video what happened in the past 2 weeks ago. But a lot of us spend a lot of our time thinking about what happened yesterday and the day before. Where if we can recognize that and step into the present, into our heart present, all of a sudden we bring that harmony, and our heart intelligence just has a way of growing and expanding. And when we're in a state of coherence, the heart radiates at a stronger electromagnetic field that impacts people, animals, and the environment. The current thinking is our heart radiates for up to 1 kilometre. And as I've mentioned, coherence improves resilience, creativity, intuition, communication, and decision making. So by making a decision today to start interacting with your emotions in a new and fresh way, start to see your emotions as, you know, your best friend that is trying to help you, that is trying to get attention. It's like when kids are in trouble or they're in danger or they're in self-harm. If a child can't hear a parent, the parent's going to yell louder. Our emotions have only been doing the same thing. They've been becoming more intense, more heightened, because they just want to get our attention. That's all they're trying to do. So just some things to remember. And, you know, there is lots of information through the HeartMath Institute that is readily available and goes into this into a lot more detail. So as I mentioned before, are my intentions misguided? I'm not sure why it works, but it does work. It has a way of bringing instant clarity. I know for myself that if I'm being asked a question and it's usually not for a primary reason, but because of a secondary reason. So I'm being asked a question because the person's in a panic about something that actually doesn't have anything to do with me. And if I can pick up that there's something not right, if I say to myself, are my intentions misguided? One of three things happen. All of a sudden, that higher inner self observer comes into play that Nev was asking about earlier. I get clarity of either what to do or simply do nothing, or how I can respond. So it's amazing just by using that inner observer, that wisdom, that intuition, that gut feeling just comes into play. And something that's good to recognize is when we're preempting what to say. Now, this is the number one mistake for interviews, or even when you're having a conversation and somebody goes, you know, were you even listening to what I was saying? Because all of a sudden you go off topic, you start talking about something else, you haven't even heard what they've said. So when we're preempting what to say, we're actually listening to ourselves. We're already thinking about, well, what is it that I can say? So you can't be preempting thinking about what to say and also connected to the person that you're talking to. So preempting what to say, it means you're listening to yourself, you're creating distance, you're reducing the conversation quality, and generally we're responding based on fears. Now, if somebody's talking to you and you're preempting what to say, it's because you want to be heard. Perhaps in the past, as a child, you were never given the option to express yourself and it comes out as an adult. You know, when we're preempting what to say, we're not listening. So you can listen to each word as it's spoken. You can hear what the person says. It opens up this amazing field from the heart, that electronic and that magnetic field from those 40,000 neurons that really connects with the persons, and the responses are more compatible. You know, it's not so much the words that we say, but when we talk to another, how what we're expressing actually connects, and can the person visually see and feel what we're saying? So it's just about being mindful that if next time you're having a conversation, just observe yourself. And if you are listening to someone, if you start preempting what to say as they're talking, that's a sign that you're about to self-sabotage, and just nip it in the bud. And if it's supposed to come up, it will come up in conversation. So just something to be mindful of. And, you know, we talk about self-sabotage. Preempting is a sign, your internal alarm system trying to get your attention, saying you're not listening, self-sabotaging. Also, or justification and blame towards others. It enables others and our own behaviours and limits solutions and resolution. When we start justifying, it actually invites the other person to start challenging what we're saying. We don't even realise that we're justifying because there's something from the past that we don't think we're going to be believed, or there's going to be some doubt. So we give more of an explanation. And I'm not saying that, I'm saying not, you know, there is an element that we need to educate and explain what we're doing, but we don't need to prove. If we had a white plate in front of us, we wouldn't try to convince somebody else that it's white. But If there's something that's really important to you that you want to do, it's about valuing that this is really important to me. You don't need to justify why it's going to be important. You don't need to say, you know, it's really going to help with my studies, and it's going to mean that, you know, if I go and do this extra course, I'm going to be more advanced, or I'm going to, you know what to do, and it's going to arm me better. The fact that you want to go do something else, such as study a new course, value that you want to do that because it's going to benefit you with your learning and how it's going to enrich you. But what we don't realize that if we justify to try and prove, we can actually potentially invite the person to challenge what it is that we're wanting to do. And if we point the finger of blame by saying, you know, he made me upset or she made me upset, it doesn't really matter who made you upset or why. It's the fact that you're upset. And it's about looking inward. It's about inviting that higher self, that observer, to really understand what's going on for me. Are my intentions misguided? Why am I feeling upset? Really doing the deep dive to figure out what is going on with you. Or if somebody else is blaming you for how you're feeling, the only one that can trigger our emotions and how we feel is our own thoughts. So if somebody is blaming you, it's about saying, well, this, you know, it's not personal. Somebody else is just expressing how they're feeling or how they're reacting. And yes, they're pointing the finger of blame at me and what I've said. But ultimately, it's the meaning that we put behind our thoughts that trigger our emotions. And when we step into a field of blame to try and understand, it takes us into the past to reflect. The past brings forward chaos. It brings forward anxiety. There is no solutions, no clarity in the past. We need to step out of the past and be in the present moment to really see what our emotions are trying to do. And those solutions, possibilities, resolutions come from the right side of the brain when we're in our higher self, when we're in harmony, to be able to get that creativity and that innovation and those answers that surface in our awareness. And as I mentioned, it's our thoughts that determine our emotions and determine our outcomes. You know, we might have a friend that is continually upsetting us. Why is it that that friend is always upsetting us by what they say? And yet if we meet a stranger or we meet somebody new, why is it that we don't take what they say personally? And that's because we haven't got that past relationship. Our egos haven't started to have a pattern of behavior that we interact with. So it's interesting to see, and maybe just practice over these next few days, that when something triggers you, ask yourself, what meaning am I putting behind this? Because I can make a decision for this not to impact me. And, you know, they've shown that through the brain, we're never upset for the first reason we think. It starts off an argument about the dishes, then it becomes about the housework, then it becomes about the garbage, then it was you never spoke to me at that party. Let's bring the conversation back about the dishes only. It's amazing that when we do get upset, there is 1,000,001 thing that then ends up triggering us, unfortunately. So it's just about keeping that in mind. And even by saying we're never upset for the first reason we think is enough to step us out of that internal alarm system, that stress reactor, and really getting us to start thinking in the present moment where our answers, possibilities, and solutions present. So we have an activity. As I mentioned earlier, I preempted in September of 2014 that I was just going to bite my tongue and keep my lips closed. So I want you to visualize, close your eyes if you're comfortable. Think of a situation worrying you. Keep your lips closed and think and feel the emotion only. And just sit and observe that emotion until it has settled. By sitting with the emotion, we actually dissolve the thoughts that triggered the emotion. So it's our thoughts that trigger our emotions and then triggers the way that we act, behave, and feel. And unfortunately, if we allow those thoughts to continue for over 90 seconds, they just continue to grow into stories. And you only have to have a look at the latest blockbuster movies. Their imagination is amazing. You know, you look at all the high tech that they use. You know, people's imaginations are phenomenal. So if we start interacting with our emotions, all we're doing is creating and evolving stories that just trigger more emotions. So I just want you to take a moment, think of a situation that's worried you in the past. You know, keep your lips closed, think and feel, and just see how the emotions settle for you. And I'll just give you a moment. Okay. So I spoke earlier about neuroplasticity. There is an amazing 2-minute video I'm just about to show. So hopefully everybody's internet connection is strong and stable. The video can be found easily in YouTube just by typing in neuroplasticity. This really shows how we can rewire our brain and create memory muscle to really arm us, which includes, as when Jody gave us, when we got Jody's examples for her gratefuls, she was creating new neural pathways and strengthening neural muscle, just even simply by thinking of those gratefuls.
Not so long ago, many scientists believed that the brain did not change after childhood, that it was hardwired and fixed by the time we became adults. But recent advances in only the last decade now tell us that this is simply not true. The brain can and does change throughout our lives. It is adaptable, like plastic. Hence, neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. How does neuroplasticity work? If you think of your brain as a dynamic, connected power grid, there are billions of pathways or roads lighting up every time you think, feel, or do something. Some of these roads are well-traveled. These are our habits, our established ways of thinking, feeling, and doing. Every time we think in a certain way, practice a particular task, or feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road. It becomes easier for our brains to travel this pathway. Say we think about something differently, learn a new task, or choose a different emotion. We start carving out a new road. If we keep traveling that road, our brains begin to use this pathway more, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The old pathway gets used less and less and weakens. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is that we all have the ability to learn and change by rewiring our brains. If you have ever changed a bad habit or thought about something differently, you have carved a new pathway in your brain and experienced neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated and directed attention towards your desired change, you can rewire your brain.
I hope everybody enjoyed that. And I do have a big smile because I'm one person at 100% that would never manipulate anyone to take advantage of them. However, what my husband might not realize is every single night when we go to bed and it's the same activity, 3 things you're grateful for and why, he is not potentially aware that he is creating a new neural pathway that is strengthening the coherence and the harmony of his brain and his heart. So, you know, if you do choose to do this activity with friends, family, loved one, children, your partner, there are so many advantages. And as you just saw in that amazing 2-minute video that is available on YouTube, more than happy to send the link as well. It's an activity that every single one of us can do. And if actors and sports stars and musicians, if they're using it, well, why not us as well? So I hope you enjoyed that. So we can all create new neural pathways. Adding a new habit that supersedes old habits create new, healthier neural pathways. We have the power to change ingrained reactions. The mind is designed to get better at what it does. If you want to learn the piano and practice once every 2 or 3 months, it's going to take you a while to learn some music. But if you're disciplined and say, well, I'm going to practice every day for half an hour or 2 or 3 times a week, the brain goes, okay, this is a habit. This person's practicing, it wants to get better. So it starts becoming in coherence to arm yourself to want to drive you to practice more. That's why when we start doing something as a physical activity or learning a musical instrument, the more we actually do that activity, the more we actually end up craving it. Now, unfortunately, it's the same for our emotions that don't serve us. If we don't learn to make a decision to neutralize our emotions within 90 seconds, all you've instructed, unfortunately and unconsciously, is to design that mind, those neural pathways to become better at being frustrated, better at being angry, better at being jealous, better at being insecure. The mind is not biased to what is healthy, unhealthy, good or bad. It's the meaning that we place behind it is determines if it is good or bad for us. So it's just about being mindful of this, that, you know, any single one of us, and the amazing thing is a belief is only a thought we keep thinking. So even just to humour me, even if you don't believe something from today's presentation, just give it a go. Just practice it. The fact that you're doing it, the brain will think, okay, this person's thinking it. That means they must believe it. And it creates a new neural pathway. And then the evidence is when you actually get to experience it. And like myself, the first time I decided to bite my tongue and focus on the emotion, that awareness became my motivator and my force to really draw my line in the sand. Now, as I said, I used to be a Jekyll and Hyde with my daughter, and my husband used to say if he saw me behave like that with anyone else, he would not be with me. And yet my family now get excited if they actually see me stress, if they think, oh, she's about to react. My husband will do anything he can to embarrass me at any opportunity, even in the supermarket, to try and get me to react. And because I have ignited that inner awareness, that inner observation, that observer of self within my higher self, my intuition, it allows me to really look at the world as an outsider, looking in, but also looking at my environment, the people, the situation, how I'm reacting. And I was a prisoner of my own mind for 45 years without even knowing there was a world outside the mind. And I truly believe the moment we value ourselves, the moment we value ourselves to create new habits, is the moment that our joy and everything that's actually waiting for us internally inside of who we are is then able, with our permission, to come out in our expression and our experiences. And as I said, I've worked with so many people where all of this has been applied into daily, regular practices. And it's amazing, people who used to be so stressed and anxious and living in that chaos didn't know how to react to their partners or to, you know, when they separated and didn't know how to maintain healthy communications, all of a sudden get to experience moments of being zen and really being empowered from their wisdom and their higher self and who they've authentically always been, but unfortunately have been shadowed in the past because of that anxiety, that chaos, that frustration, that insecure. So this is available, and as that video showed, we can all create new neural pathways within moments. So we have an activity to create long-term change to your intellectual DNA and self-esteem. So I either want you to write down a positive self-belief or think of one, or if you're comfortable, write something in chat. And You can read it out loud or even to yourself. Write down a positive self-belief. So, you know, you can say, I am of value. You know, this morning I said, Alice, be prepared to be amazed. I said, Alice, expect a miracle today. You know, I go to an extra length. I actually write on the inside of my palm. Someone might have seen that I had some writing. My husband says to me, can I be mindful when I go down the stairs, because the ink keeps going down on the white barrister. But for me, it's about, I use any tools and strategies at any time. So for me, I've got 100% awareness. I've got love 100%. I've got service to others at 100%. I've got, I surrender my ego to the soul. It's anything that is real and relevant and resonates for you. And then write down a higher goal. So today I'll make a decision today that will benefit my physical health. You know, for me, I made a decision to get a water canister that, you know, I've made a decision to fill that up twice a day. So I'm getting my 2 liters of water a day. So the goal can be absolutely anything. It could be, you know, I'm going to go out and, you know, spend 5 minutes doing some grounding. You know, research has shown that if we go put our feet in grounding, and I know for you, Jody, you know, you mentioned some health earlier, that even if you can, you know, not while it's cold and wet outside, but when the grass is dry, you know, get your feet, take your shoes off and, you know, just have your feet in the grass. And they say the amount of health benefits from grounding, and there's so much online, and I'm more than happy if anyone's interested, put a note in chat, and then I can send out a couple of links. That there's amazing documentary on grounding, and there's also an amazing interview that shows the heart is not a pump. It doesn't pump out our blood, but rather puts our body in flow, and how grounding helps with that flow. So hopefully that you've all come up with a positive self-belief, even saying your name, like myself, Alice, be prepared to be amazed. Jody, be prepared to be amazed. Neville, be prepared to be amazed. You know, just write down a high goal as well. So I hope you've all had a moment to do that. And as I said, these slides will be available, and you'll be able to do these activities in your own leisure as well, and perhaps even introduce them to family and friends. So I spoke earlier about parenting ourselves, and we do this via our self-talk. So this is a neutralizing stress strategy for you. The first 2 seconds and 7 words are vital. The way that we communicate and connect to ourselves, and the way that we communicate and connect to others. So on the left-hand side, if you can just repeat to yourself the left-hand side, see how it makes you feel, and then repeat the right-hand side. And you should be able to pick up how your brain and mind and heart is feeling in harmony or disharmony. So as an example, if we say I have to, all of a sudden it makes me feel like I've got no choice, that my free will is being taken away from me. Versus if I say I get to, that's like a privilege, and I get to do my housework, I get to go to the gym. All of a sudden it's my choice. We have a rule in our house. We never say I can afford or can't afford. We say I can prioritize or I can't prioritize. The mind is amazing at manipulating us. We can't afford that really nice main meal that we want out at dinner because it's $20 or $30, so we'll go for a cheaper meal. Or we can't afford that more expensive cut of steak, so we go for, instead of a $50 cut of steak at the supermarket, we go for the $9.99 special. But yet our favorite musical band is traveling, you know, doing an Australia tour. Tickets are being released tomorrow, and all of a sudden we can afford those $200 concert tickets because it's our favorite band and it's the last time they're going to be traveling around Australia. So even by saying I can prioritize or I can't prioritize really empowers you to make a decision. Well, what's important to you and what's not? Maybe buying that cheaper cut of steak is important to you and you found a way of tenderizing it. And you want to save up money to pay for that concert or that, you know, that handbag that's all of a sudden half price, or that suit or that outfit that all of a sudden's gone on special, and you can prioritize it. So it really starts to open up our options and what's available to us. And saying I'm not worthy versus I am worthy. Saying I am worthy has that higher frequency because it's coming from our heart. It's our truth. Saying I'm not worthy relates to something that somebody has told me in the past where I'm not good enough, or I can't do this. So it's interesting how the left side feels to the right. How often do we think I'm not good enough to try that new sport? I'm not good enough to apply for that job. But the moment I go, well, I am good enough, all of a sudden I feel courage, I feel a sense of peace and harmony. And by saying I am good enough, I'm igniting those healthy neurons. I'm growing new neural pathway that is going to expand my own intelligence and really, really arm me for what I can do. If you say, I can't do this and I can do this, Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you can't, you're going to be 100% right. And I won't let this go. How many of us won't let go what somebody said, how somebody made us feel? But if we turn around and say, I let this go, I just let it go. Stop the stories of what somebody did or why they did it or how they made you feel. It just sends you down the rabbit hole for hours. That stress has no loyalty to you. The phone rings, the door knocks, and all of a sudden that anxiety goes. Have you ever been entertaining or getting ready to entertain, and you know, you and your partner or somebody in the family, you're having an argument, but the moment the doorbell goes, the guests come in, all of a sudden there's harmony in the house because you've let go of whatever was causing you to be agitated before, because that doorbell, visitors coming into the house, disturbs that concentration. It severages ties with what has happened in the past, and all of a sudden, you know, you're just in a different headspace and in harmony. So even by saying to yourself, I let this go, is valuing. And the moment you let it go, you can then reflect back at a later time for how you can strategize. And even saying to children, instead of saying, can you do something? Ask them, would you do something? Oh, I can't. Can you do something? Oh my God, here goes mum or dad again. They asked me to do something. Where if you say, would you do this for me? Well, yeah, I would do it. So over the next few days, find somebody that you can just test this on, whether it's in person, verbally, even by email, asking someone to do something, and see the difference between can and would. It's amazing how you say would, you catch them off guard. It's almost like it goes under the radar and all the person goes, yeah, well, I would do that. Would you do the dishes? Yeah, sure. Can you? Oh, here they go. They're asking me to do something again. They roll their eyes. So strategy 2 to neutralize your stress. Forgiveness is an emotion that comes from love. So when we looked at that picture for the ego that comes from fear, and the true self comes from the soul, high self love, forgiveness and compassion comes from love. And it's amazing that forgiveness has a way of bringing harmony. It has a way of bringing peace and resolve. So scientists, as I've mentioned earlier, say that what's in our heart radiates over a kilometre. We have a choice. Either we ignite our magnetic field and our electric field from our heart to contribute to further angst, anxiety and stress, or we can choose, I'm going to say forgiveness, which brings peace, resolve to ourselves. I always say, forgive them for what they do not know, because if they knew what I knew, they wouldn't do it. Now, this isn't about not having somebody adhere to consequences. You know, we all need consequences. They're always going to be cause and effect. But this is more important to ignite how you're feeling and what you can do. We can either contribute to a field that has more anxiety, more stress. That's only going to bring on more chaos. It's not going to help resolve. Or we can choose to ignite our harmony, our brain and heart coherence, and then really be armed on how we can help the situation moving forward. And for strategy 3, it is about 3 daily gratefuls and incorporating why we're grateful. So it increases our positive mood, lowers our stress, boosts our immunity, and lowers our blood pressure. Strengthens our social connection. There is a Yale University study that actually shows by incorporating 3 daily gratefuls, it increases your dopamine, a healthy chemical in your body, to reduce your cortisol, to reduce your stress. It retrains the brain to scan positive. So instead of scanning 10 negatives over 1 when you're stressed, it teaches the brain to scan 10 positive over the negatives. It makes you smarter, faster, proven up to 31% more productive, and more accurately in diagnosing problems. So yes, you can just write 3 gratefuls a day, but can you imagine how much you can actually arm yourself when you're actually incorporating why am I grateful as well? Creating that visualization, creating new neural pathways, new memory muscles that's going to arm you. So they're 3 really simple strategies. And, you know, if you can just even go, I'm just going to give this a go. If you give these a go for up to 21 days, you literally rewire your brain. Practice makes permanent. They say practice makes perfect. I like to go with practice makes permanent. And this is about neutralizing your stress reactors so they completely dissolve, so you become the observer of yourself and put yourself in the driver's seat to decide what your emotions do, rather than autopilot dictating to you, driving from A to B, wondering how you got there, missing all those beautiful trees and the blue sky on the way, and rather teaching yourself by applying these stress strategies to neutralize your emotion and really start being in awe of what you observe, slowing down what's happening. And so you can really see how you can be empowered, how you can become accountable, how you start looking within, pointing the finger of blame no longer becomes relevant to who you are or part of your experiences, because you learn pointing the finger of blame just deflects, just absolutely deflects and delays identifying what that resolution is, to really arm you to bring that best version of who you are that's been inside of you all your life, and bringing it forward to really arm you and bring you in harmony for all that you want to be. And many of you may have heard of Ho'oponopono. It's been around for many, many, many years. So if you have heard of Ho'oponopono, if you can just put yes or no in the chat. It focuses on forgiveness and creating mental, physical, and spiritual balance through the conscious, subconscious, and superconscious mind. I was very fortunate to present to one of the leading people in health, and also as part of the Nursing Foundation. And she had never heard of Ho'oponopono. However, she said that when she was in palliative care, they would get their patients who were, you know, in their last few days of life, to repeat to themselves, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you and thank you. And she said it was the only thing that would bring their patients peace. You know, it's amazing how 4 very simple phrases can bring peace, because our wisdom and intuition, our self, can only be heard through our peace. Our intuition is banging on the door when we've got chaos. It's trying to get our attention. It's gone bang, 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 hear me, but you can't hear your intuition, your higher self, throughout all that chaos. You've got to silence the chaos so you can be guided on what to do that's going to best support you, the environment, as well as help you, not only for yourself, but the people that you're interacting with. There's even been lots of studies that Ho'oponopono has been used to self-manage hypertension and stress, and how using 4 simple phrases can really, really reduce and bring that peace immediately. And I know for me that I use this 8 months, 24/7, every single day, every single moment I felt any anxiety or stress. I was severe. I was fractured in my life growing up. I was a prisoner of my mind for 45 years and didn't know. I was having conversations going down the rabbit hole every single day. And I used Ho'oponopono to really bring peace for me to start observing my surroundings and what was going around for me. And we have an activity for you to practice in this moment. So if you're comfortable and with your permission, close your eyes for a moment and imagine a person you would like to heal your relationship with. It could be a neighbor. It could be somebody, a family member, somebody you haven't spoken to for many years. With them in mind, repeat these phrases just to yourself out loud and just say, I love you. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. And thank you. And I hope that for you that were comfortable to apply that activity, and if you weren't, maybe it's something that you can consider over the next week or two, just how it really brings our left and right side of the brain into harmony. It brings forward that coherence between heart and mind. And more importantly, it brings a sense of peace and tranquility to who we are, and we become the observer of self. We become that silent listener, the higher self, the wisdom, just seeing who we are and embracing and valuing who we are. And I'm going to finish off with an inspiration of what is possible. I was very fortunate quite some time ago to hear of Wild Bill, who lived in a concentration camp for 6 years. What was so fascinating about Wild Bill is he was in his apartment with his wife and his 4 children. And there was an unexpected knock, or maybe it was expected. People were in hiding. And his whole family, including himself, were taken outside to the streets. And Wild Bill tried to negotiate with the people that were intending harm to him and his family. And they realized that he could talk. He was a translator in many languages. He was a lawyer, and he had seen the consequences of hate. And on this day, they made a decision, his captors, to murder his wife and 4 children in front of him. And they decided to take him prisoner because they knew they could use his services as a translator. He chose from that moment love and forgiveness. He had seen as a lawyer what hate brought to those families, and he decided to parent himself by making a decision that no matter what happened, he was going to choose love and forgiveness to every single person he met, including the people that were responsible for the murder of his wife and children. In 6 years, he suffered the same starvation diet, the same airless disease-ridden barracks that he lived in and slept in, and yet he did not suffer the same physical or mental deterioration. When the war was over and the American soldiers went into that camp, they had assumed that he had only recently been part of a prisoner in that camp. They utilised his services to assist them in finalising their records and to help people go back to their homes. It was several months later that they found out that Wild Bill had been in there for 6 years, and it was his ability to bring his brain and heart into harmony that allowed him to be at peace and connect. He was well known within that whole concentration camp, and he helped so many people. And that was the power of choosing love and forgiveness over fear and hate. I hope Wild Bill inspires you as much as it's inspired me. Ho'oponopono inspired me for 8 months, 24/7. It literally transformed my entire existence and life, the way I interact with myself and other people, and all that I've been able to achieve this last 6 years, which I'm extremely grateful for. So I do hope that from today's presentation, the tools and the strategies, that you make a decision to parent yourself, conquer yourself, and you will conquer all. Thank you very much. I'm now going to hand it over to Tracy for any questions that anyone may have.
Wow, great. Thank you so much, Alice. What an inspiration Wild Bill is. A comment from Gail, and I'm going to try and pronounce it, Ho'oponopono?
Yeah.
Yeah, she says they used it, or she used it to neutralise a toxic situation that had lurked for 6 months and found it amazingly simple but incredibly powerful.
Yeah, so thank you, Gail. And it does have amazing results, as you mentioned, you know, to try it on a situation that you had for 6 months and it to bring that peace and harmony. The moment we choose to proactively use an affirmation, it doesn't matter what we use, it's just got to be real and relevant to each and every one of us. The moment we do, we've taken ourselves out of the past into the present moment. We automatically put our left side of the brain, the right side of the brain in harmony. We activate our heart and mind coherence, and we allow those 40,000 neurons to come into play and connect with ourselves, but also our environment and the situation as well. So, Gail, thank you so much for sharing that story. And I know how much peace and help it's brought to many people. So thank you.
Great. Priya says, my stress is I'm blaming myself for many things which went wrong and when people made some comments. I take it personally and break down. Is there anything I can do immediately if I get those thoughts?
Yep. It's about using tools and strategies that are going to come to your arm. Now, Priya, you don't have a camera or a time machine to go back into the past. The past no longer exists. They have proven that our memories, every time we recall memories, they become worse than Chinese whispers. Our imagination gets better at evolving the story, and in some cases, so far from the truth that all we're doing is sabotaging ourselves and reliving those experiences. Blame just deflects. It takes you further and further away from resolving. So for me, I would say, initially when I started my journey, I would say, I'm not giving this any reality. I let this go. I would say, this isn't personal. Also using questions. What is my opportunity? Try and get comfortable with asking questions and don't answer them. If you actually had the answer already, you wouldn't be asking the question. So it's about asking the question and inviting your wisdom and your intuition to bring the experience forward. So one that I used to use was, I let this go. I choose to let this go. Saying, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. They say it's a clearing statement to actually clear and release what our experiences have been in the past, our pain, our hurts, letting it go. You know, instead of blame, say, well, what can I learn? You actually wanting to blame yourself is actually your emotion saying, Priya, there's actually something to learn and grow from this. What can you take from it? So find something that resonates, even saying, Priya, be prepared to be amazed. Anything. The moment we bring ourselves into the present moment, that's permission for our higher self and our wisdom to start guiding. So I hope that helps. And, you know, when you blame, Priya, you're not actually valuing yourself. And unfortunately, life brings us evidence of our beliefs. It doesn't know, it's not biased to what is going to help us and what's not. Your ego will bring up upsets and emotions within you because it's trying to get your attention to choose a different path because you're bringing harm. Our health, you know, we've all got cancerous cells, and unfortunately stress can feed those cancerous cells, where good thoughts can actually, you know, regenerate those cells into healthy cells. So it's really important that you value yourself and just use anything that resonates. You know, I choose not to give this any reality. I let this go. Anything to bring you peace. The moment you've got peace, your higher self will show you what to do through its silence. So I hope that helps.
Great. Jodie's just made a comment. She loves your in-depth answers to questions, Alice. So fascinating. So thank you.
Thank you, Jodie.
Suzanne says, when you try and neutralise your stresses through a few methods you have discussed, yet your mind still has chatters, how do you try to stay focused and stay on track? She says she feels like a netball court with multiple balls thrown at her, and then she's trying to deal with each one coming her way.
Perfect. So, Suzanne, thank you very much. I did try not to duplicate too much from last week's presentation that will hopefully be available. And there is the presentation that can be emailed from last week's to anyone today as well, whether or not you were on the webinar. So that's available. It's a very valid question. So they've shown how important visualization is. And the key is when we're in that fury and we're in that fire, we can't see because of the smoke. It literally blinds us. So the idea is after you've been stressed about something, what normally happens is the moment the mind is still, all of a sudden you start thinking back over that argument or that situation. That's actually your higher self, your wisdom, knocking on your door saying, oh, it's quiet. I'm going to give you an opportunity to reflect about what happened. But while you reflect, I actually want you to reenact what would have actually served you better in that situation. It's really important that you choose to reenact with kindness. If you start berating yourself and saying, I was stupid, I can't believe I did that, I'm not going to be good enough, how could I have done that? You're choosing to relive the experience that upset you. So you're creating a stronger neural pathway, a new neural memory in the brain to get better at what actually upset you, where it was your intuition knocking on the door. So if somebody came to your door with the most amazing gift, are you going to shut the door and yell at them? No, you're going to welcome in and embrace that gift and be grateful. Well, your intuition, when your mind is silent and it's giving you a thought to reflect on what happened, instead of berating yourself, reenact a more servable outcome that's going to serve you. And I want you to think about it like this, that if something has stressed you out and an hour later, all of a sudden you start reflecting, if you had somebody in your neighborhood that was going to people's homes to cause them harm and that was on the news and they were reporting they had a knife, you would make sure in your power that you'd make sure your front door was locked and you would not answer that door to anyone. You would just want to keep yourself and your family safe. Our thoughts that come up after that aren't serving us, that get us to reflect and we're back berating or blaming or upset with ourselves, is actually doing us more danger and harm. It's actually impacting our healthy cells. That stress is feeding any diseases we have. So it's really important to recognize that our thoughts of self-blame, accusations, being upset with ourselves is only trying to get our attention to draw the line in the sand and, choose to value ourselves and say, well, how can I look at this situation with love or kindness? How can I reenact a visual that's going to serve me, not harm me? So I hope that's answered your question.
Excellent. I'm just trying to find a comment from Kathy. Oh yeah, there it is, Kathy. So Kathy did join us last week. She was the lovely lady who I forwarded her wonderful feedback through to you, Alice, about her visualising, since we're talking about visualising. And she says she'd love to see you do more of these presentations in the coming months. And she's loving it and the inspiration it gives.
Oh, Kathy, so much. Thank you. It's always amazing when we get feedback, especially somebody that we haven't met or not familiar with. And for me, it is about being 100% in service to others and really using my experiences and my journey. I was very fractured. I lived in a world of down the rabbit hole and, everything that I present has come out of hundreds and hundreds of one-on-ones and case studies that, I've looked at. So I'm just so grateful. Thank you so much, Kathy, for being last week as well as this week and your feedback. It is truly appreciated and I'm very grateful for it.
No problem. We don't have any more questions, but I'll just read out a comment from Nicole. So she says she tries to go for a walk at lunchtime to get out of the office and clear her mind. She looks at the vast sky, the plants, the trees, the gardens, and takes a deep breath, and it releases some of the stress and brings calm. So she's ready to go back to work.
That is beautiful and an exact response and answer for mindfulness. So for me, when I was going into the city, I would make a decision, I would preempt, I would strategize. The moment I stepped off the train and put my first foot down on the platform, I would feel every single emotion in that step and that movement. And it had a way of igniting that inner self that Neb was asking about earlier. All of a sudden, as I was walking the streets to the building where I worked, I would be looking up at a tree and all of a sudden I would see birds that I hadn't even heard. It just ignited my intuition and my field of awareness. So the fact that you're doing that, you're creating new neural pathways, and you're actually, you know, in a lot of ways, Nicole, you're actually de-aging yourself. So they have shown that mindfulness, being present, observing our environment, de-ages us, re-energizes and our cells rather than aging them. So well done to you, and thank you so much for sharing that.
Excellent. And Jodie says she can already see that the ideas and strategies presented today can be used immediately in specific parts of her life. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And if anyone would like, you know, those links for the grounding document, phenomenal research and results are presenting simply by even grounding our feet. You know, and there's also grounding mats that I'm going to look at as well that bring on so many health benefits, which is amazing, and reduces inflammation more importantly than anything, which is one of the main things that causes, you know, our body stress and everything else in our health issues. So thank you so much, Jodie.
Great. Was there any last tips you want to leave us with today, Alice?
Every single person has this innate, authentic self that's been with them since the moment that we were born. Unfortunately, through life conditioning and stresses, whether those stresses are financial in our family, whether it's the food that we eat, whether it's past experiences that causes the way we have our relationships. So unfortunately, you know, from the age of 2 to 7, show me the 2-year-old child, I'll show you the 50-year-old adult, can really shape who we are as an adult. But our inner authentic self has always been waiting for us to present and interact and show the true wisdom and intelligence that we are. And we don't realize that our own insecurities and thoughts limit who we are. So I don't need anyone to tell me what my strengths are or who I am. I journal that. I include them in my gratefuls. I want to see who I am, because I can guarantee most people will be able to tell you how amazing and wonderful you are. And yet when they tell you, you're really surprised. And yet if we actually tell ourselves or write them down, we're literally creating that strong sense of knowing that becomes part of our day-to-day existence. So please, you know, even just try one of the strategies, see how it makes you feel and it works for you. That's all I can ask. You know, that would be my miracle for today and every day. So thank you so much. And Tracy, I just can't thank Marion Library for the opportunity of this platform. Zoom is new to all of us. To have this opportunity to present and connect to people, you know, I couldn't ask for more in life. I'm just so grateful. So thank you for this opportunity again.
You're more than welcome. And in answer to Kathy's comment earlier, yes, I will speak to Alice about some further presentations that we can do with her in the near future. So keep your eyes out for that one. Thank you so much, Alice, for joining us this morning and sharing so many wonderfully useful insights and tips that we can all take back and practice in our daily lives. And such simple everyday changes too, such as paying utility bills to remove that stress, paying them earlier. So I actually have to pay some today, so I'm going to give that a go.
It's amazing. Out of sight, out of mind, immediately. It's unbelievable.
Awesome. And everyone, please keep following the Marion Library's Facebook page, the City of Marion website, and check your inbox to be kept up to date on all of the upcoming Library Through the Lens presentations and workshops. So keep your eye out there for more Alice workshops, because we've been enjoying those so much. And if you haven't already registered, next Tuesday evening, we welcome debut award-winning author Imbi Nimi as she discusses her book, The Spill. So I hope you'll join us then. And please have a great day, everyone. Thank you again, Alice.
Thank you.